everybody, welcome back to Talk with TQ. I love interviewing really great guests, and like I always promise, I try to find the best guests, most interesting guests I can find on the planet. Well, tonight we have my friend, and she's actually a renowned magician. She does magic, and she does magic globally, but she also does magic locally, and she's also an author. Her name is Margaret Steele. I've known her for a number of years, and I've always been very impressed with her work and the fact that she's really into the history of magic. Tonight, she's going to talk to us a little bit about her upcoming book, The Great Boomski. And it's about Black magicians who got their start in, I guess, the turn of the 18th into the 19th century, pretty much. And it's just a fascinating story. Her book has 26 characters, and they were assistants to Alexander Herman, who is a renowned magician who's often been said to be better than Houdini, but he didn't have the same publicist. I'll say it like that. So anyway, Margaret, talk about this book. This is so interesting. It's historical.
It is. It's a history, and it's an untold history. It's a history that's never been revealed before for a lot of reasons, and we can talk about that. But my specialty is the Herman dynasty of magicians. It was an actual dynasty of magicians. There were two brothers, a nephew, a wife. They were all big stars of magic. And the greatest star of all was named Alexander Herman. His wife, Adelaide Herman, took over the show after he died and became the first great female magician, and she wrote a memoir. And in 2010, I became the recipient of this long-lost memoir and was able to publish it 78 years after her death. And we finally learned about her, and we learned about her great work with her husband, and we also learned much more about a little assistant the husband had, who was in a lot of pictures and photos and was mentioned, but there was very little about who this person was. And his name was Boomski. And this assistant character was played always by a young African-American boy, usually starting at about age 13. Some of them were as young as 11 when they started. The role was based on Alexander Herman's childhood role assisting his older brother. And the two of them worked out a system of magic where the assistant did all sorts of sneaky stuff under the radar and was able to make the magician look like the magic was truly magical, because he didn't have any tables on the stage and all this apparatus. Everything just happened to come out of thin air. And when Alexander Herman began touring in America, he cast his childhood role with a series of young African-American boys who played this little page called Boomski, this little comic foil in his show.
Comic foil, I like that term. Mm-hmm. So tell me, there's a long list of names in your book, and it's not really a book yet, it's basically just a manuscript that's totally prepared for publishing. How did he find them?
I knew the name of one of them from early on because Adelaide Herman put his name in her book. His name was Milton Hudson Everett, and he joined the company at age 13. He was picking cotton in a cotton field in Americus, Georgia. In 1891, the Herman Company came to perform in that little town, only time ever they performed there, and they had just lost their assistant and they needed a new one, and all the young kids that worked in the fields would show up to try to work backstage at the show, and Alexander Herman asked this group of young boys who was the best buck and wing dancer. That was the dance of the time. And this one little boy danced for him, and he was on the train that night. And he worked for the Herman Company off and on for the next 40 years.
Wow. So how much older was Alexander Herman than this young man?
Alexander Herman was in his late 40s at that time. But he had been, Milton Hudson Everett was not the first. The first one had been about 10 years earlier. So they would age out of the role. The idea was that the assistant was very small. That's why he would hire these very young boys. And some of them stayed small and some of them really grew. And when they got really too tall, then they would age out of the role, or they fell so in love with magic because they were standing next to him all the time, and many of them became his students, his only students besides his wife, and many of them left, even as teenagers, to go off and have their own magic careers.
It almost sounds like the first affirmative action in a strange kind of way. I mean, I don't know how they were treated, and I have to wonder about that. You know.
Well, that is all covered in the book because I really wanted to find that out. Anything that has been written about these characters before doesn't give any context of what their experience was like, but the time they lived in was during the Jim Crow era of segregation. So the company traveled all the time, but their assistant traveled differently. He couldn't eat in the same restaurants, he couldn't stay in the same hotels, he couldn't always enter in the same doors that they could. Although, as I've learned, there were great exceptions made for liveried servants. So if a black person was dressed as a servant, they would be allowed to follow their employers onto the train. Otherwise, they had to go ride in what was called the colored car. So there was a whole lot of juxtaposition. So Boomsky was treated very, very well in terms of the times. This little boy made double the salary of the highest profession available for African Americans at the time, which was a Pullman porter. He made double what a Pullman porter made, but he only made 75% less than any other person in the company. So he was treated well, but at the same time, he wasn't treated outside the norms of the time.
So it's all sort of relative.
It's all relative.
You know, to the period, to the era. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm wondering, and I wonder if you have any insight on this, is that did they do this because it was easier for them to hire these African American, like, slaves, basically, or people just out of slavery, or was it less expensive? Were they more skilled? Why did they hire them as opposed to hiring white assistants?
He was a specific character. So he was a comic character. He was a little boy, and he did pratfalls. He did and slapstick humor. So a little boy falling on his face was funny, and a little black page falling on his face in those times was actually even funnier because they played up all of this stuff. And also, Alexander Herman was a great improviser, and he would fool around on stage all the time, and a lot of these assistants were really thrown by that. But the ones who weren't would banter back and forth with him, and it was a lot of broken taboos because there was nothing like it on the stage. This world famous and Jewish conjurer too. So we're talking about two minority groups represented that were both highly discriminated against in everywhere. So you have this sophisticated conjurer and this little boy bantering back and forth and arguing with each other and moaning and groaning and complaining, and it was hilarious. Mm-hmm. People so it made it funnier. It was just so unusual. It was not the norm. You would almost never see a black person on stage in a white company or any sort of a mixed race company. You wouldn't see that. So they loved pushing the envelope and novelty and things that were different. And he was a beloved character. Everybody, in the 1890s, if you had gone anywhere in America and said, "Who's Boomsky?" they would have known.
Oh, is that
Yes.
He was that famous?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Really?
Yes.
So that's before TV.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, before
movies,
and all of that.
before cars.
So I guess the media at that time was all print,
Right.
and so he was that famous that he'd end up in newspapers nationally.
Right.
Wow, that's very impressive.
Right.
I'm wondering also, I can imagine that Boomsky had some skills. So he was able to acquire skills by working with Alexander Herman.
Right. He, at least 7 of the former Boomskys became professional magicians, and they were extraordinary sleight of hand artists because he taught them. Alexander Herman was one of the greatest sleight of hand artists, and one of the tricks he performed was the multiplying billiard balls. I should have brought some. I could have shown it to you, but it was a new trick at that time. It had only been around for maybe 5 or 10 years, and he was the leading exponent. I don't know if that was the right word. Leading example of somebody that could do this remarkable trick, and he taught it to every one of his Boomskys. So they went out there in the world, and they were the greatest sleight of hand workers at the time. Although they got no coverage in the magic press, so that's why they're not remembered.
And so he was not the Boomskys weren't really a threat to him because of that. Just knowing that.
No.
So I'm wondering if that had something to do with his choice of assistants. You have to wonder, like, why did you choose them, and why didn't you trust or choose, a white assistant, which would probably have loved to have that position as well?
Oh, there's a definite reason for that.
What is the definite
reason? The reason is that magic is all about. People know about, they know a lot of the secrets of magic, but one thing they don't understand is that one of the most important parts is the psychological manipulation of the audience.
Oh.
Yes. And what they also don't understand is that the assistant is doing a lot more than they think they are doing. And what you want is somebody who is not suspect at all, somebody who is considered to be powerless, maybe not so intelligent, maybe, somebody who's the audience's unconscious bias is just going to dismiss. So
unconscious bias.
So you want your assistant. You notice how most magic shows have the dumbest blonde bimbo?
Yeah.
That's a strategy.
Oh.
That's a strategy. You're going to look at her and go, oh. And meanwhile, she's doing half the magic. And she's not drawing any heat because the unconscious bias kicks in and you don't give her any credit. So you're not watching her very closely. So Boomsky was a huge secret weapon because he could get away with murder. Nobody's watching him. Nobody suspects him. They see him falling on hats and regurgitating eggs, and they don't see him, pulling little strings and wires and doing half the magic he did. But he drew no heat.
Drew no heat.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So who's your no. I want to ask you for your secrets. But it's just interesting. I've never heard somebody talk about the unconscious bias.
Right.
And so that's like a real standard thing, I imagine, when doing magic.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Interesting. I mean, you've performed on these big stages. I saw you perform on some big, I guess they considered it like sort of off-Broadway, but it was a big theater. I don't remember exactly what it was called, on Fifth Avenue in Manhattan, but it was uptown a bit.
Oh.
It was a while back.
Yeah.
But boy, you just commanded the whole stage.
Thank you.
Really. And I've seen you do small venues as well. I like the small, intimate venue because you're one of the few people that know that I just happen to be like a lover of magic.
I know that.
I want you to fool me with something. I want to be tricked.
Uh-huh.
I really enjoy that. So let's backtrack a little bit.
Yeah. How
did you get into this profession? How did it happen? It's a performing art.
Of course, the standard answer is I was tricked into it, but that's I was always interested in magic as a kid, but I had no way to learn it. Mm-hmm. And I never saw a female magician. But I was always, when magicians would come to my school, so I found a book in the library and I taught myself some tricks. And I always had a few tricks, even, even growing up. But then, I can't remember what year, I think it was 87. I walked into open mic night in a little honky-tonk club it was in Chester, New York, on the other side of the river. And it was lots of people singing, but there was a magician performing, and he was totally different from anything I had ever seen. Most magicians had the very dated top hat and tails and the bunny and the bad lines and but
the magic wand.
This magician was basically doing kabuki theater with magic, with feathers and fans, and I was just fascinated, and I went and introduced myself. His name was Jeff McBride, and he has started hundreds of magic careers because people saw him and got interested in magic, and he's been one of my mentors. He has a magic school in Las Vegas now, but that was
huge.
Once I saw that, it was like, oh,
that's me.
That's it. So yeah.
That's a beautiful thing.
But I was older. I was already in my 30s. So, I missed those all important young years when this is such an ageist business. So
really, I did not know that.
Oh yes.
For women?
Yes. Not for men. No.
Oh, for women.
For women. Yes.
Okay.
So, but not for what I did. So magic is so interesting because it's a pretty misogynistic world, and we can talk about that because magic itself, the art of magic, has become pretty sexist because magic is power. So the people we are comfortable displaying power in our society are men, other white men. Other people that display power, not so comfortable with. So we've got that issue. So if in the world of magic and magicians, that's very ageist, very misogynistic, very sexist, very racist, very homophobic, all changing a lot in the last 10 years, but when I got into it, very much so. But then there was a whole area that was completely different and in which I had complete control over my life, and none of that mattered, and that was in children and family entertainment.
Yeah.
And which I think is the highest form of the art anyway.
Really? Okay.
Oh, yes. Well, all the magicians, famous magicians of yore and now, all try to act like they want to perform just for adults, right? They think it's adult entertainment. But you go back and you read the history, and they all performed for children. They all had children in the audiences, every show, and then special children's matinees and special children's performances. So
you do that, and then some, because I've seen you perform in a smaller venue, in your studio, and other places, smaller venues. And I just remember one that stands out to me. It was almost like a dance routine with you, and it was very sensuous, And I'm like, look at her with legs and like bare feet, legs looking really good, dancing very gracefully. The music was good with these hoops. And you just it was kind of like it was very, come hither. It was that kind of magic, and so it was sexy. I have never seen anybody do a sexy magic trick or a sexy magic performance.
I'm going to have to send you some videos. But
okay. Yeah, but I can't tell anybody you have to kill me. Is it like that?
Well, no. But, thank you. I don't make my magic overtly sensual, but there's a lot in Las Vegas that is, I
think it was your birthday.
Okay.
It was you did a thing in your studio for your birthday. Yeah, everybody's feeling kind of good.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's really, I think you're the first person that makes me think of magic as really a performing art. Where before you think it's magic, I like it, give me some of that, I like it. But it's really a performance for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you've probably taken some theater or dance or music.
Right.
You're good friends with our dearly departed, Brian Delma
Right,
Taylor, who
right,
we miss him
right.
so much. So you kind of cut from the same cloth
Right.
academically in a sense.
Right. I was a professional musician for many years, for 40
Yeah.
years.
Yeah. What did you play?
Oboe.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Do you ever do music in your act?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. When I first started doing magic, I did. I performed at this club that was down on Carmine Street in the Village
Oh, I
called
know.
Mostly Magic. Did you
Okay.
ever go to Mostly Magic?
I probably have been there. I think I
it
remember.
closed in
Yeah.
'93. So it.
Yeah.
But they had.
1991, I think I was there.
Yeah. They had an open mic night the first Monday of every month. And I would go to that open mic night. I just started taking magic lessons, and I didn't have enough of an act, so I would play the oboe, and I'd do the oboe would stop working, and it'd have an egg in the bell and all this stuff. It just wouldn't work. But I auditioned the first Monday of every month for a year, and they finally booked me.
Oh. Oh, was it a special act you did to finally get booked?
I think they just got tired of me showing up all the time. I finally got to the point where they thought, okay.
Yeah, they could figure you're going to keep coming.
Yeah.
So when you auditioned at this play, at Mostly Magic, was it in front of an audience or just in front of the?
Yeah, it was an audience.
Auditors?
No, the audience. It was an open night. The club was open. It was mostly comedians.
Yeah.
And then a few magicians that would want to work at the club.
Somebody probably asked for you back, I'm sure.
Well, they knew who I was. It's a very small world, and I was getting to know the owners pretty well by then.
There you go. Okay, that's good. That's good. So what do you do besides writing? I mean, you're really into the historical thing with magic, which I think is important. People don't realize what a real specialty it is until you know somebody like pretty personally. Then you see, wow, this is really something. I think about small, intimate venues, which I kind of like very much so. The Millionaire Magician.
Right,
We
Steve
talked
Cohen.
Steve Cohen. Yeah, I mean, I think
He's from Westchester.
He is?
Yeah.
Really? I didn't know that. But, this is like so fascinating. And, I always want to hire you to do a party. I'm thinking about having been thinking about it seriously for probably the past month since I got my magic certification in another subject.
Okay.
So I was thinking it'd be really great to have like a little gathering with close friends, have Margaret come and do some things, maybe do some tricks.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm definitely going to talk to you about that.
All right.
But I think that magic is a great gift to give. I mean, what's better than the gift of magic? So talk to me more about the book.
Okay. Well, I've been actually actively writing for 4 years.
Okay.
And I did not think it would take anywhere near this time, but I just kept finding more stuff.
Oh.
When I started, I had the names of 2 of the Boomskis, the young men who played Boomski, and now I have 12.
Oh.
And I have full or partial biographies of all of them. And it was, I kept discovering more and more stuff, so I couldn't stop. I still get more stuff.
And you have some great photographs in your,
Yes.
in this, I guess it's like a manuscript. And I was very surprised that you were able to get these photographs. Right. So what is your research process like?
Oh, well, interestingly, I'm going to do, with an associate, I'm going to be doing at some point a video tutorial series called Magic History Research 101, because I get calls from people all the time saying, what do you know about this person? And 10 minutes later, I have a complete list of stuff for them.
10 minutes later.
10 minutes later, yeah. And that just I'll have a starting because it's the internet age.
Yeah.
So we're in another golden age now. We're in an incredible age. All of this stuff that was lost for over a century is there now for us to find. So I have my research leans heavily on newspapers.com and ancestry.com, which are huge, huge resources. So old newspapers, old public records, for one thing. Magic History Library, so David Copperfield let me spend an afternoon in his library. Some of these images come from his library. And
David Copperfield.
And he comped me to his show, and
Wow.
then let me go to research in his library, and it was really very, very special, very special. And but there are magic history and magic collections. So there's the information, but there's also all the imagery, the posters, the photos, the letters, the ephemera, which has been lovingly collected and passed down through the ages with specialty collectors. And it's a very small world, so I know all of them.
Right.
So I think I've thoroughly mined the magic world for images. And then I found many more images in newspapers and from descendants. I found descendants, one of the Boomskis, the one who went by the name the Great Boomski, Isaac Willis, has over 300 living descendants, most of them in Canada.
Wow.
And he has living grandchildren that he died before they knew him. They didn't remember him, but the family passed down all sorts of stuff. But they don't know the story, so they're getting that from me.
Yeah.
So I'm telling them the stories of their images. But that's all one big package of information. Visiting, I've been to the Harry Ransom Center at the University of Texas in Austin, which is a huge magic collection, Harvard University, Library of Congress, all these places that you have to go physically visit, because even though you have a huge amount of information digitized, that's still only a small percentage of what's there. So that's really it's really exciting that even though I've been doing all of this research for 20 years and writing this book for 4 years, once I put it out in the world, other people are going to, I want them to take it and run with it and find all the stuff that I didn't find, because it's still just the beginning. Now, another huge resource for this that was missing for over 100 years were the African American newspapers, which have been digitized. And they are an incredible resource, because all of this information that was not in mainstream newspapers or in the magic publications is right there. It's right there. So, and it's incredible because you're reading about them in their own words, in their own time.
That's really fascinating. I can sense your passion for this. And I'm really glad that you're doing something like this, because not everybody has the propensity, or even the inclination to actually research. Like, it's a tedium.
I have, I'm somebody who could be addicted to internet games, online games, and just play them all the time. So this is like an online game for me. I'm just going through all the little rabbit holes, and I love nothing more than spending 10 hours at my computer researching some little something. So.
Wow, someone's going to probably reach out after this
interview.
No, please
don't.
But it's a fascination to me, and I think it's so appropriate for you to be on the show during African American History Month, even though our show it'll air even.
Yeah.
I guess it's in perpetuity, but I'm so glad that you're here, and I know that we're running out of time to talk, but. Margaret, I'm so glad you're my friend and that you talk to me.
I'm glad you're my friend.
I really am really glad about that, because you're like one of those really cool people to know. And thank you for coming on the show. You reach out to her because she's the best. What's the best way for them to reach you, to contact you?
My website, margaretsteele.com. Or if you put my name in Google, you find me.
Yes, it's all there. Margaret Steele, she is magical in many ways. She's a great person and an incredible performing artist and phenomenal magician. And her new book, The Great Boomski, check it out. It'll be out soon. It's not out yet, but giving you a heads up so you can be the first people to get one hot off the press. So until next time, thank you so much for coming to watch Talk with TQ. I'm always so happy when you come here, and I'll see you again. Bye-bye.